Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Thursday wasn't the best of days for the BJP. It fell short of the halfway mark in Haryana elections, where it, of course, was the ruling party, and in Maharashtra as well. Even though it was well past the halfway mark, it did manage to get less seats than the last time. Now, what this verdict tells us is that rhetoric perhaps is no longer working, and that the government must now focus on the economy and must address concerns like joblessness, like farmer crisis, farmer anger, and of course the fact that the economy is not doing well. Will the government do that, and what is needed is what we are going to look at in Government Matters today with me, Ruhi Tiwari. Ramya Nair is in the studio with me this Friday. She, of course, tracks the economy for us and will give us a perspective as to what is wrong with the economy and what kind of medicine does the government need to inject to correct the problems. Also, I will talk about the political aspect of the verdict and how in other sectors like the welfare sector, the government now needs to bring back focus. Ramya, to begin with, not a great day for the BJP, as I said, clearly shows that, the momentum of the 2019 Lok Sabha elections has slowed down, and the fact that the economy is not doing well, the fact that there are no jobs seems to have hit the voters somewhere. What is the status of the economy? Can you give us a few points of concern?
The growth, the headline GDP growth numbers haven't been really good. India's growth slipped to 5% in the June-ended quarter. That's a 6-year low. Right. So the full year growth for 18-19 was only around 6.8%. But what is worse is that even the RBI expects that growth for 2019-20 will be only at 6.1%. That's a really low growth, and that obviously has impact across sectors. So one notable sector that has slowed down is manufacturing. Manufacturing is obviously a job creator, and we've seen that many companies have reduced their production, and because of which there have been many job losses. Right. The auto sector being a very stark example, right, which is they have cut down production and because of slowing sales. So that's one factor. The other thing is rural distress. Farmer incomes have gone down. Many blame many steps taken by the Narendra Modi government for this. MSP increases haven't been adequate. The government has also been quick to, in case there is a price increase, they've been quick to bring in export bans, which adversely further affects farmer incomes, because of which, the rural sector is in a big distress. Right. And that is also reflected in rural demand, right? So rural incomes have fallen, so rural demand has fallen. Right. And that can be seen in the sales numbers of automobile companies or for FMCG products, those low value rupees 5 or rupees 10 packets. Right. So firms have reported a slowdown there.
Right. Now, Ramya, you spoke of joblessness and people losing jobs. Now, this is something that perhaps started after demonetization, and that really triggered this what has now come to become a serious issue of joblessness. Are there any figures that we can talk of at this point?
Demonetization happened in November 2016. Right. So the NSSO, the National Sample Survey Office, they have a unemployment survey that comes in. For 2017-18, the numbers show that unemployment hit a record 45-year-old high of 6.1%. So that's a huge jump. We don't have any further numbers, right, but whatever quarterly data that the government has put out shows that urban unemployment is really increasing. That could be because of many reasons. There were many MSMEs that were operating in the capital. Right. And in other major cities, and these MSMEs were forced to shut shop because of the cash crunch that followed demonetization, and they haven't been really able to again bring back or come back into business. So that could be one of the major reasons why at least urban unemployment is increasing. Right. Rural unemployment again, one knows that agriculture employs a lot of people, but it is disguised unemployment. Right. Because
Right. So also to me it seems, Ramya, that since this government came to power in after the Lok Sabha elections, its entire focus has been on Kashmir, because it made that big Kashmir move early August, and since then all its efforts politically within the country and diplomatically also outside are going into Kashmir. So clearly somewhere the focus has shifted from governance, and that seems to have become a bit of an issue. In fact, in the first term of the government, what really held the Modi government through, besides its brand of politics and besides Narendra Modi's own popularity or his goodwill, was the welfare work that this government had done. Rural housing was a big push. It got a big push from this government. It did very well on the ground. Ujjwala did very well on the ground. So a lot of road construction in villages happened. electrification happened. A lot of these factors, welfare factors, led to the Modi government's return to power in such a, a stunning manner in the 2019 elections. In the last few months, I get a sense that, as I said, focuses away from that, little more towards Kashmir, little towards issues like NRC, talking about how you want to, give citizenship to Hindus, and towards the Ram temple. So away from governance, more into politics. Do you also get that sense?
You're better, equipped to answer that. But the sense that I get is that the government has not been adequately consulting economists. So you will have many economists who are suggesting that ideally there should be a personal income tax cut to boost consumption, because, only then will people go out and buy things when their personal income tax rates go down. But this government instead opted for corporate income tax cuts, which obviously do help companies and encourage companies to start investment. But, there's this whole commentary about how it's a vicious cycle, because companies will not invest in new manufacturing facilities if they're not sure if their products are in demand, if there is no buyer's market for those products. So, there is this lack of consultation probably that the government is seeing right now. And also when you talk about welfare schemes, a slow growth also means that the government revenues will fall sharply. So, tax revenues are already falling. Corporate tax revenues have come in much below expectations and much below the budgeted numbers. That will also reduce the government's pace to spend on these welfare programs going forward. Exactly. And the budgets next year will be maybe much lesser. Another thing that will come in is the 15th Finance Commission report, where so it will be implemented. It will be implemented from effective next year. So again, one needs to wait and watch what will be the share of the central government kitty and how much will they get to spend and how much they'll have to give to states now. So
right.
It's going to be very.
So these are all linked, and it's like a vicious cycle. Right, yes. Ramya, but you said something which was interesting. Not consulting economists. Now we know that has been a problem with this government. It's something we've discussed earlier as well in Government Matters. The fact that no economists are really, they stay on in this government. There are so many who've quit various positions, various posts. Now, is that also a factor, the fact that you don't have anyone advising you in the right direction? Because we've seen what happened with the last budget. They almost had to unravel the whole budget. So is that an issue?
So there is a machinery in place. There are bodies in place. For instance, there's the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, which was very much in place when the budget was presented. Right. But what is interesting is that I don't think there's a consultation process that is happening with the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, right, because some of the decisions announced in the budget were publicly opposed by the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, which makes you think that probably they were clueless and they were not even consulted on very important policy matters like issuance of sovereign bonds. So it's not that the mechanism is not in place, but probably the mechanism is not being utilized for effective consultations. But Rui, what do you think? Do you think that the allocations for, say, MG, NREGA will now need to be increased given that the adverse results that have now come in?
See, the Rural Development Ministry has already asked for an increased allocation and increased from the 60,000 crore that was already given to the scheme. But see, NREGA is a distress scheme. It's not supposed to be an alternative to providing employment to people. It's a safety net. So if there is more and more demand for NREGA, it means there aren't adequate jobs being created otherwise. So, that in itself tells us, if there is such enhanced demand for NREGA, it tells us that there are no jobs. And it's a demand-driven scheme. If there is a demand, the government is bound under the NREGA, under the Act, to provide enough funds so that each person who demands work gets 100 days of work a year. So yes, they will have to enhance, the allocation for NREGA. But my sense is that they will have to think more on the welfare front, because that's, as I said, somewhere down the line the focus has shifted. Rural housing is something that did very well. They need to again bring that into focus, and perhaps they would, after these election results, want to come up with a few more welfare schemes, big bang welfare schemes like they did the last time, so that gives them that necessary push, in the next few years. There are very crucial elections coming up. Next year is Delhi, of course, but Delhi is not as rural, but there is Delhi. There are elections in West Bengal, in Assam, in Bihar. Over the next few years, there's Uttar Pradesh in 2022. So there are big elections coming up, and the government will have to, perhaps BJP government will have to focus on welfare, governance, and correcting the economy so that it can face these elections. But just before I close, Ramya, very quickly, what can the government do to contain the economic slowdown?
I think the focus now has to be to revive consumption. So adequate money in the hands of the farmers, adequate money in the hands of the middle class, because they are your big spenders. Right. So
that's
that
what the
needs to be
government
there.
will have to do. Well, Ramya and I, we were talking about how yesterday's election results would perhaps give the Modi government a little bit of jolt and would sort of reduce the rhetoric that we've seen over the last few months and force them into correcting the slowdown in the economy, as well as ensure that focus shifts back to welfare scheme. Thank you so much for watching Government Matters. Here's wishing all our viewers a very happy Diwali. Have a pollution-free and safe festival.